All right, so thank you everyone for being here today on this rainy day. If you have not put your name and your organization in the chat, please do so. We would greatly appreciate it. We do use that for attendance purposes. Again, welcome and thank you for attending today's technical assistance webinar. This webinar is presented by Amity Foundation, acting as the third-party administrator for LA County's Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department and the CFCI Care Grants. The CFCI, or Care First Community Investment Grants, are the result of ballot measure J, voted in by LA County residents in 2020. Care First Community Investment Funds are intended to be invested directly into communities and alternatives to incarceration that address negative outcomes caused by racially driven criminal legal system inequalities and long-term economic disinvestment. Today's webinar is being recorded. You do not have to be on camera. However, understand that if you are on camera, your image may be captured in the recording. Staying on the webinar represents your consent to being recorded. So today, we do have a special presenter, Ariel, who will introduce themselves in a bit. However, I do want to go over our centering community slide. So at Amity, we do incorporate teachings that center the community before we begin our work. Today, we will use the LA County Land Acknowledgement to recognize the price paid by individuals that has resulted in efforts such as the Care First community investments. We recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tonva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in the genocide of the First Peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. So I will now pass it on to Ariel, and feel free to take over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel Lopez. I'm the Quality Assurance Specialist for Amity Foundation's third-party administrators. I'm happy to be here with you all today. I see some familiar faces and some new faces, so I'm excited to get to work with you all. If everybody could make sure they're on mute, please. There we go. Okay, so for today, we're going to go over an introduction to the site visit monitoring tool and site visits in general. We'll actually walk through the site visit monitoring tool on Apricot together. We'll talk about the follow-up steps after a site visit is complete, and then we'll provide you with some resources and take questions. Throughout the webinar, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and Mina will help field those, and then we'll go over them at the end. We'll go ahead and get started. So introduction, why do we conduct site visits? As some of you know, your grant advocate comes out to do site visits twice a year. And really the two main things that we're looking for when we do site visits are to check in on contract compliance. And so that is the site visit monitoring tool that we'll walk through in a second. And secondly is services. So we really want to see the work being done. A lot of times we're a little separate from the services you all are providing, and that's an opportunity for us to get to see the amazing work you're doing in the community. Like I said, site visits occur twice a year. So for cohorts 1 and 2, your grant advocates are currently out doing site visits. And then for cohort 3, you should be getting emails to schedule those in the next couple of weeks. Before we move on, I want to note that if you're a dually funded organization or a triple funded organization, the site visit monitoring tool that we'll review in a second does have to be completed for each contract. So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. We're going to move over to Apricot, and then we'll come back to the slides in a second. Okay, you all should be seeing the site visit monitoring tool, I hope. Some of this,
we can.
Thank you, Mina. For some of you, this is going to look really familiar. And for some of you, this might be your first time seeing this. And so we'll go through it together. Again, drop questions in the chat. I know this is new to a lot of you. So when your grant advocate comes out to complete the tool, they'll go in here. This first part is all going to be filled out by your grant advocate. You don't have to worry about that. Starting off, they'll do an administrative review. So here, the thing we're going to look for is if you have a fully executed copy of your contract. It's really good practice for you to have a copy of this easily accessible, whether that be a physical copy or digital copy. Your grant advocate is just going to confirm. And as you'll notice, as we walk through the site visit monitoring tool, some of the items are recommended and some of them are required by the contract and required for you to be in compliance. So keeping an executed agreement is a recommended practice and not necessarily a required practice. If you're unsure if you have a copy of your contract, reach out to your grant advocate and we can send that over. Next up here, we have an organizational chart. So your grant advocate will ask to see your organizational chart and will ensure that the employees under the grant, so the employees that are listed on your budget, are reflected on the organization chart. Again, it's good practice to maintain this organization chart, and we actually have a sample for you on our Amity and You website. And the Amity and You website is a resource that Mina put together. It's really helpful. I'll reference it a lot throughout this webinar. And so if you are interested, feel free to visit amityfdn.org/amity-u. Your grant advocate can also provide that, and then I'll provide it again at the end. Here we have our first required field on the monitoring tool. So this employment eligibility verification. So this is where your grant advocate is going to check that you have employment eligibility verification documents for each employee listed on your budget. So this could be I-9 documents, social security cards, work permits, employee authorization documents, 1099 documents if your employees are independent contractors. We ask that you have these ready at the time of the site visit. And that's really essential with all of the things that we're going to discuss today. The easiest way to complete a site visit is to come prepared. And so your grant advocate can provide you a document that lists all the things that are needed for a site visit. And a lot of grantees will actually put it all in a binder and have it so their grant advocate can just look through it. That's really great practice and also helps you as an organization to build capacity. Next up, we have background checks and attestations here. So your grant advocate is going to be looking for background check attestations. This contract requires that you all conduct at minimum a Megan's Law check of all employees listed on the budget and any volunteers who are working under the grant. So if you're conducting a more thorough investigation like a live scan, then we still ask that you maintain an up-to-date attestation. And we ask that this attestation is updated every 6 months. This is to ensure that if anything changes on someone's background check, we're catching that. This is actually something that your grant advocate is going to scan during the site visit. So we ask that you have a physical copy of that prior to the site visit. And again, as I mentioned, this is going to be for all of the staff working on your budget, any volunteers working under the grant, and then we're going to ask for an attestation. This is often a section where we have a lot of questions, so please feel free to drop those in the chat. Next up, I want to talk about sufficient staffing. So here's where your grant advocate is going to ask for an update on if all of the grants paid positions are filled. Your grant advocate, we ask that nothing is really a surprise to them, that they're updated every step of the way on things that are under the contract. So if you have staff changing, you have a position vacant that might impact your ability to provide services, please make sure you're sharing that with your grant advocate. And you should have a process in place to notify them within 15 days of a change happening at your organization. So knowing that if someone leaves, who on your team is going to email your grant advocate to let them know. Similarly, anticipated changes. This is an opportunity to share any changes on your project. So if you anticipate you might need to move locations, again, staffing changes, programmatic updates, please include that here. This is an opportunity for us to be in the know about what's going on at your organization and for us to identify if there's any ways we can support you. Auto insurance. This is an important one. If you're transporting participants, you need to have auto insurance. So your grant advocate is going to ask if you've begun transporting students in the last 6 months. And if you state that you did, our insurance team will actually check to ensure that you have an active insurance policy in TrustLayer. So if you are transporting students, make sure that you ensure you upload that document to TrustLayer. If you're not transporting students, then this section isn't applicable to you. Another insurance section here, we have workers' compensation. So your grant advocate is going to ask that you verify that you're maintaining workers' compensation insurance and ask who is covered. So we want to make sure that all of the employees listed on your budget are being covered by workers' compensation. This is also something that should be uploaded to TrustLayer. If you have any questions about using TrustLayer, reach out to your grant advocate and we can get you connected with our insurance team. Fair labor standards. This contract requires that you all have a procedure in place to follow all provisions of the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act. So this means maintaining timesheets for your employees, ensuring everyone is paid the local minimum wage, and taking their breaks. Additionally, there is a Fair Labor Standards Act posting that must be made available for all your staff to see. You all are probably familiar with the large one that has the federal minimum wage listed at the top. If you don't have the posting already, we can provide that to you. But your grant advocate will look for that posting and will also look to see how timekeeping is managed. So if you're using ADP or Paychex or Gusto, your grant advocate will ask to see that the employees listed on the budget are included on there. So please have that accessible during the time of your site visit. Okay. Another notice here. So the grant requires that you provide a notice to your employees regarding the federal earned income credit. So your grant advocate will confirm that you're notifying your employees and ask how you share that information. So some organizations choose to have a posting on the wall. If you're providing your employees with W-2s, the notice is available on the back of copy B. Some employers, put it in their handbook or provide it upon onboarding. One thing that I think is really important to note here is if you are utilizing subcontractors under this grant, it is also your responsibility to ensure that they are providing this notice to their employees. And you're going to kind of see that throughout the time that we look over the monitoring tool. You all are responsible to sharing the provisions of the grant with your subcontractors. If you have additional questions about that, your grant advocate can connect you with me and I can explain kind of what are the things that your subcontractors need to be looking out for. This notice here is available on the Amity New, or will be available on the Amity New website. It's also easy to find with a quick Google search just to make sure that your employees have access to that. Okay, notice to employees regarding the safely surrendered baby law. So your grant advocate here will ask how you notify your employees, the same as the last one. It's required by the contract that you provide them with the safely surrendered baby law fact sheet. This is again easily accessible. It's linked in your contract, linked on the site visit monitoring tool, and we'll have that available on the Amity New website as well. We're just going to ask how you provide that, and then again, that you are notifying your subcontractors and ensuring that they notify their employees. I see the chat popping up a lot. Mina, do you think we should stop for questions?
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah, let's take some questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the first question is, all our programming happens on school sites. We do not have offices there, and admin staff are remote. Can these meetings be hybrid? One part of the meeting is online to provide all the materials, and the other part of the meeting on the school sites to view the programming in action.
Yeah, really good question. Absolutely. You can also come into our office. Your grant advocate can facilitate it virtually. One thing that I want to make sure we know is if you have a rent line item on your budget, then we do need to see that physical space. And so it really depends. When you're working on scheduling with your grant advocate, share that information with them and they can let you know the best way to meet and get those documents.
And then the second question, or another question, is if we already provided this insurance information before the program began, are we to upload this information again?
Another good question. If your insurance has not expired and your COI is still active, then you don't need to worry about uploading it again. If your COI is no longer active, then you do want to make sure you get an uploaded COI to trust layer.
And then another one, are subcontracts the same as vendors?
That's a good question. Joanne or Carol, do you want to jump in for that one?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I want to say that the same requirements will hold true for vendors and subcontractors the same. So
Cool.
essentially,
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. And then how can we create group case notes, meaning we have a group session discussing XYZ, boys, girls circle, but do not have direct individualized check-ins with the youth, but rather we do a group activity. Is there a way to do a group case note?
There are some ways to do batch uploads. That is more of a data question. I would encourage you on Mondays from 12 to 1, Mina and our director of data facilitate data office hours that are dropping on Zoom. Your grant advocate can provide that information. I think that'd be the best place to ask that question.
And then I believe we were told in one of the meetings that we do not have to do a background check except for checking if they are on Megan's Law. Is that still the case?
Yes, that is the case. Our minimum requirement is a Megan's Law search. If you're working with sensitive populations, then you all need to be doing more thorough background checks. But for the purpose of this and purpose of the contract, Megan's Law is the minimum requirement. I apologize if I misspoke earlier.
Could you please repeat what you said about timesheets? Did you say that the timesheets need to be uploaded?
The timesheets do not need to be uploaded, but your grant advocate needs to be able to see them, see recent timesheets for the employees that are listed on the budget.
Is it 30 days or 15 days allotted for sufficient staff changes?
We ask that you notify us within 15 days. And that goes for any changes. If you are anticipating you're going to need to change locations, you want to make sure you let your advocate know before you settle on a new location. And then for staff changes, we ask that we're notified within 15 days in writing, please.
Is there also a list of the items that we should have ready?
Yes, your grant advocate can provide that to you. That's a good question and very good practice to be prepared ahead of the site visit.
What qualifies as more sensitive populations regarding background checks?
I believe, Joanne, maybe you can jump in if I'm wrong, but I believe it's if you're working with minors, then you should be doing a more thorough background check.
that's correct. It is going to be in the case that you're providing services that you need to be licensed. So under licensing, you will have additional background checks that are required as part of local and state licensing. So as long as you follow what your local and state licensing requires you to do, then that's the requirement. But other than that, it will be just the Megan's Law.
We also do programming on school sites and meet bi-weekly at our offices. Do we still need to have federal minimum wage posters? And for employment verification, does that need to be of all staff who may work at the site or just the staff working at that site currently?
Okay, let me answer the first part and then see if I understood the second part. For the first part, you do want to make sure your employees are notified somehow. So if you are not coming into a physical space, you don't have a physical office, you still need to be making sure you're providing the notices to them. That goes for all three of the notices we discussed. You can have them available in your office. You can send them to them, have them in your handbook and get acknowledgments that they reviewed them. For the second part of the question, Mina, can you repeat that?
Yeah. Do we still need to have federal minimum wage posters? And for employment verifications, does that need to be of all staff who may work at the site or just the staff working at that site currently?
Okay. What we're going to be looking for are the employees that are listed on the budget. So whoever is being paid under this grant will need to see the verification documents for those employees.
How many days in advance will we be provided the list of items to have available for review prior to the site visit?
That's going to depend on your grant advocate, but they'll provide you that upon scheduling the site visit, which is typically done a few weeks out.
And that's it for now, Ariel.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Let's move on. So the next section we're going to talk about is record retention and inspection audit settlement. So here your grant advocate is going to ask and need to verify what procedures you're using to maintain financial and employee records. The goal here is to help ensure that you're prepared in case of an audit. So if the county were to come out and do an audit, and if you were to get audited in general, we want to make sure we're helping set you up for success. And so you need to be maintaining financial records. I always tell the grant advocates that this looks different for every organization. So share with them what your procedures are. And then if we identify that there's some support needed there, we can provide that. Same thing goes for employee records. You need to make sure that you're maintaining your employee records to the retention procedures. And so whatever that looks like for you, just make sure you're sharing that with your grant advocate. Again, it could be a digital record, or if you're keeping physical records, just share that with your grant advocate. Okay, HIPAA. This is a common missing item during site visits. And so I want to make sure it's clear that all grantees who collect data for Apricot must ensure they have HIPAA procedures in place and that you're providing training to your employees about the procedures. So our minimum data requirements are protected health information. Name and date of birth are protected health information. And so you want to make sure that you're providing HIPAA training to your employees. Mina has put together some really great resources that can help you create procedures for your organization and some training information that we can provide you with. And your grant advocate is going to ask, how is health information protected? So what are the procedures you have in place? And also, how is your staff trained? So if you're doing, if you all are training them on your direct procedures, if they're getting a certificate of completion from doing an online course, whatever that looks like, we're going to make sure you share that with your grant advocate. And again, we have a ton of resources when it comes to the HIPAA section of this. Next, we have grievance procedure. So it's required by the contract that you all have a grievance procedure in place and maintain signed attestations for all of your employees. So this is to have a way that your employees can file a grievance and that there's a resolution procedure in place. And what your grant advocate is going to look for at the time of the visit is a copy of the attestation. We have samples available on the Amity new website, and it is required that you maintain up-to-date attestations for all employees under the grant. Some organizations are going to include this in your handbook, and that's fine. That's a fine procedure to do. We're just going to need to see that those are signed by your employees. And this is another section, like I talked about earlier with the background checks, where your grant advocate is going to need to scan a copy of the attestation into Apricot. So please have that available, physical copies available during the visit. Next up, we have subcontractors. So simply your grant advocate is going to ask if you provide subcontracted services. And again, provide a reminder that it is your responsibility to ensure your subcontractors follow the items covered in the contract. And in the contract, it's explicit where the subcontractors also need to be responsible for different items. The next couple sections are about performance reporting and data submissions. So for performance reporting, your grant advocate will review your provider monthly data report with you to ensure that data is being input on a weekly basis. I want to provide a reminder here that if you're going 30 days without data input, you will be placed on a performance improvement plan. And we have, again, a lot of resources for data support, like those office hours I mentioned earlier. So make sure that you're submitting, communicating with your grant advocate in spaces where you need support with this. Next, we have the authorization form for release of information. So each participant that is their data is being submitted into Apricot, it's required that you all maintain a release of information form. We have an example on the Apricot homepage that you can access, and it must list that this information will be shared with JCOD and Amity Foundation. And these forms need to be renewed annually. If you're not sure if you're collecting ROIs, please make sure that you confirm that before continuing to input data. What we don't want is that students are submitted to Apricot without an up-to-date ROI on file. This is also another section where your grant advocate is going to need to see copies of the ROI. And so maintaining those, keeping them up to date, having them ready during the site visit is good practice. Then this one is a recommended section. Like I mentioned earlier, some are required and some are recommended. Here, your grant advocate's going to ask you to share training and orientation practices. We've listed some suggestions for training. The two that I really want to highlight are the scope of work and the milestones. It's really, really essential that you review those two documents with new staff working under the grant. It just helps to make sure that everyone's on the same page, working towards the same common goal, and has an idea of what the responsibilities of the organization for this contract look like. The next section is the grant update report review. So this part here talks about your milestone quarterly report. So if you have, at the time of your site visit, you have any outstanding reports, this is a section where your grant advocate will talk to you, where we'll discuss those, and also talk about if there's been any issues with meeting deadlines for the quarterly report. We can identify some ways that we can support you in making sure those are submitted on time in the future. Again, we have technical assistance hours, we have drop-in in-person hours at our office, so your grant advocate can provide information about that. You're going to review your program milestones that I just discussed. This is an opportunity, if you're having any challenges or you anticipate any challenges with your milestones, share that with your grant advocate here so that we know, okay, there might be some opportunity for support here in helping them meet their milestones. The question is, are you on track to meet your milestones? So we want to make sure that we know anything that might come up, we're aware of. Interventions and challenges. So this is an opportunity for you to share any challenges you've encountered, and then your grant advocate can help connect you with the right resource. If it's something related to data, they can connect you with our director of data. If it's a compliance issue, they can connect you with me, our finance team. We really have a lot of support for you all, and so we want to identify how can we offer that support if you're experiencing operational or service delivery problems. We're coming to the end and I'm seeing the chat pop up a few times, so I know there's some more questions. Your site review summary. So here your grant advocate will indicate if the programmatic requirements are being met. Sometimes it might seem a little intimidating if they're putting in there what things need to be done. I want to assure you that we'll talk about it in a second. Our follow-up process does offer you a lot of support in completing whatever items are outstanding. So no need to be intimidated. And that's what this question is that do you understand that you may receive a corrective action plan for any deficiencies? And I'll provide that within 48 hours of the visit. This checkbox here just acts as a reminder that you all are reviewing some really essential elements of your contract, the most recent budget, your milestones, and your scope of work. This last section here is a space for you and your grant advocate to add notes, comments, recommendations. I ask that you please be honest in your feedback because it helps us identify where we can further support you. And then it's going to have you close out with a signature here. I want to take more questions here and then we'll talk about the follow-up process. Mina, if there's any questions.
Yeah, there's could you please repeat what you said about the timesheets? Did you say that timesheets needed to be uploaded?
I think we answered that one, but they do not need to be uploaded. Your grant advocate just needs to see them and verify that there's a timesheet for each employee listed on your budget.
What does follow-up look like if we're not fully compliant? How long do we have to address the changes?
That is a very good question and a perfect segue into the next section. So we'll go over the corrective action plan, which is the follow-up, and then we'll come back to questions. I feel like whoever dropped that really set me up for success here. Mina, can you give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen?
Yep.
Good, okay. So the next steps are corrective action plan. So the first step is your grant advocate completes the site visit monitoring tool with you, and then within 48 hours, the quality assurance specialist, me, will review the tool and follow up with you directly if needed. So any items that are marked no on the template will receive follow-up in the form of a corrective action plan. And it includes resources, references to the contract language to make sure that you're understanding where the compliance is coming from, and then a deadline for the items to be completed. And I know the question was, what is the turnaround time? It really depends. Each action item is going to have a different deadline based on the urgency of each action item. So items like the background checks, that's something that's really important and is going to have a shorter turnaround time than like building out a new procedure that might take a little bit of time for your organization. Again, I want to mention that our team is available to support you. I always offer a time to meet with you, and then Mina is also available to support. We can go back to questions, Mina.
Yes. How long does the site visit and review usually last?
That really depends. I would say typically anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour is like average. It may take a little longer if you are missing items or you want to be your grant advocate. If you have more staff on your budget, it might take a little longer. It really depends though. And then it also is going to depend what services your grant advocate is observing.
And then can you please show us how to access the site monitoring tool in Apricot?
Actually don't know if I don't believe grantees have access to view the monitoring tool ahead of time. So we have a PDF version that your grant advocate can provide to you. And I'll actually maybe Mina and I can follow up after with an email and provide that document to you all.
And that is all the questions.
Wow, okay. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so Amity New Resources. So this is the website that I referenced a bunch of times. It's referenced a ton of times in the monitoring tool, is our Amity New website. So Mina put this together and it contains a ton of resources for you all to utilize, not only specific to the tool, but also just a really great capacity building resource. The website is continuing to grow. I'm continuing to add resources. Mina's continuing to add resources. So take a look there, but continue to check back as well. And then I included my contact information. If you have any specific questions, we can also take more questions now. I just ask that you CC your grant advocate if you're reaching out with questions specific to your organization.
And there are no other questions oh wait, hold on. When it comes to milestone deadlines and quarterly reporting, what is a general idea for important dates? Is the deadline different for different organizations? Will I have to contact my grant advocate for that information?
No, so the milestones are due, the milestone quarterly reports are due the 5th of the month following the end of a quarter. So for example, for year 1 and 2, the next quarter ends February 28th, and then the quarterly report is due March 5th. So that's the flow that we look at. If you look at where your contract started, it's going to depend on what year you're in. Every quarter, it's going to be the 5th of the month following. And all of the milestone deadlines were set by you all. So it might be that you have a range of deadlines or a specific deadline that you can find on your milestone template that was submitted to your grant advocate.
And can we obtain a copy of the document that was used in the webinar? Yes. So all of our presentation slides will be uploaded to our Amity NU website within 1 week.
Any other questions?
Not in regards to this webinar that I see. No.
Okay. Well, again, feel free to reach out to me directly at this email or phone number. Please CC your grant advocate if you're sending an email, and I'm happy to answer any questions or schedule time to meet with you to go over the site visit monitoring tool and compliance issues.
Thank you everyone so much for joining today. I hope you all learned something and are scheduling or getting emails from your grant advocate in order to schedule those site monitoring site visits. If you have any questions in regard to this tool, please email Ariel. And as always, CC your grant advocate. They are always your first point of contact. Again, stay safe and have a great Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.